This video is the first video of part 4. Now we'll be doing fiscal policies. Now you have to understand what is fiscal policy. Like this whole part 4 is about government doing something. So back in the days in the history in the 1900s, we have a man. This man was a very intelligent man, right? This man's name was Keynes. I don't know how you spell it, but Keynes, however you spell it. Keynes said, listen here. So Keynes noticed that the economy, nobody is actually controlling the economy, right? So when the economy goes up and it goes down, there's no one controlling this, right? And Keynes said, look here, Oz, all those things happening over here, going up, going down, why is nobody controlling the economy? Keynes had a very good idea. He had an idea of a government. In specifically, a government collecting money from everyone. This money is tax. Then the government getting the tax and spending it on the economy to reduce this up and down. So instead of it being up and down like this, it'll go a much more slower pace up and down, which is good. This is too drastic. As it goes up here, the real GDP, it's inflation. Prices are going up. When you're going down, unemployment, extreme unemployment, poverty. But if we can do this, where it's very short waves, that's good. So Keynes said the government, introduce a government where we collect tax, government will spend this money on the population, and we can make the economy work. So that was Keynes' idea. From the time Keynes' idea has been implemented, the whole world is using this idea. Now, another alternative the economy could work is just letting it be like this. But Keynes said in the long run we are all dead. Man died in 1900s. So basically, in the long run, he's saying, why are we waiting for the economy to restore itself, become better itself, when we can do it ourselves now with the government? So that's what Keynes' theory, right? So the national budget. So we got the government, right? It collects tax, and with the tax, it spends on the economy. The income is obviously going to be the tax, right? So the income is for the government is the tax. So it collects this from the population, from the people. Then it spends. So it's called government spending. So government spending. So government will spend on the economy, right? So that's how the world works. Now the income and the expenditures are recorded in the national budget. Accounting students is basically like the comprehensive income statement or comprehensive income, where you got your all the stuff money you're getting in and all the money going out. So income and expense, that is the national budget. So G, government spending, and T is taxes, right? Expense, this is income, right? Expense, this is income. This is expense, by the way, expense E. Okay, so to calculate the budget balance is very easy. Sales minus income minus expenses, basically. Revenue is another name for income. So income minus expense, right? You get a positive figure, that means it's a surplus, right? If you get a negative figure, that means it's a deficit, right? Because if you get a positive figure, this means that income is bigger. So obviously it's going to be a surplus. That's good, that's profit, right? Budget balance, when both of them are equal, right? When revenue equals expense, we call it a balanced budget, right? So when there is no profit, no loss, right? The government is not a business, right? So it doesn't operate like on a loss or a profit. It's all to do with controlling the economy. That's what the purpose of government is in this world, right? Also to like do stuff for the world, country or so on, right? So obviously budget have debts, right? Debt. So when the balance is negative, so another name for negative, it's a deficit. Obviously the government has a debt, right? Spending too much money, more than it's earning in taxes. So how do you interpret this graph? Very easy, right? You need to look at this graph and tell me where there's a deficit and where's a surplus. Wherever the expenditure is above the revenue, this means it's a deficit. So all here is deficits. Can you see? Because you're expending more than what you're earning. But see the small area here. This is actually a surplus. Because the blue graph, your income is greater than your expense. So the small part here, see? That's the only place where it's a surplus, but the rest here is deficits. most in all economies you get deficits. So back in the 1900s, a lot of people were hating on Keynes because for you to implement an economy like this in this world, in this era, throughout the world, it's going to make, like, it has to happen where government goes into deficits. Like, no government right now in this world never went to a deficit when implementing where they put the Keynes theory to work, right? Government has to go in deficits. That is why we have income tax increases, all that. So yeah. So supply side effects of fiscal policy. Now, what is a fiscal policy? As I said, fiscal policy is when the government controls the economy by spending on it and getting it taxes. So when the government controls this economy like that, right, it's called fiscal policy. So controlling the economy by spending in the economy, doing some stuff, doing tax rate decreases, increasing tax. So it's spending on the economy and doing all this stuff, right? So now there's going to be side effects, right? Obviously, the government is coming in and controlling the economy. It's going to have a side effect. You're not letting the government, you're not letting the economy fix itself. You're not letting the economy how it was before Keynes was born, right? Before, the economy was just going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. There was no involvement by anyone. But now we introduce government. So there has to be a side effect. Something has to happen. What is the effect of this government now doing this? Fiscal policies, right? So it's very, very easy, right? So when you think of it, first main thing should be income tax, right? Now, firstly, what is income tax? Income tax is a tax which is done by government. So when you working as an employee, you will have to pay part of your salary as income tax, right? So income tax for you is bad because it reduces your salary. But obviously it's going to be income for the government so they can use it, right, to implement fiscal policies and so on. So what's going to happen with income tax? So let's say the fiscal policy. Now, anything fiscal policy is when the government intervene and do something. So if the government increases tax, that's a fiscal policy. So when the government increases tax, what's going to happen? What's a supply side effect? It's very, very easy. The tax on labor income, when you're working and when you get taxed, that's bad, right? People get depressed. So more people in the world, if the tax is too high, will get depressed and they'll stop working entirely. They'll say, why must I work when I'm getting so much of tax on my income? I'm making 10,000 rand, but the tax is 3,000 rand. All this income, what, for nothing? I'd rather not work in the economy. I'd rather do something else. I'd rather work from home and do an informal business that doesn't do all this tax things and all so on. So that's what happens over here, right? The tax on labor income influence potential GDP. Why? Potential GDP, if you look at my previous videos, I told you potential GDP is made of three things. Number one, how much of labor hours are in the economy. Number two, how much of capital in the economy. Now, when I refer to capital, it's like human capital, so skills of human beings, and physical capital, so like your machines, everything in the business. Third one, I said is what I said, human capital, skills. I'm trying to get that thing to my mind now. What else? Okay, so first one I said it's the amount of labor hours. Then it's capital. I'm just trying to think what is the third one I said with regards to potential GDP. Okay, I'm gonna search it while I'm talking. But yeah, I forgot. But yeah, so when there's tax right on your income, it'll make people not want to work. So what's going to happen is this will reduce the people who want to work, the labor hours. And I told you, potential GDP over here is labor hours included in potential GDP. So obviously, if the labor hours decreases because people do not want to work, then potential GDP will shift to the left. Because if you look at your graph, you know how we have this graph. Potential GDP is your long run aggregate supply. This is from part 3. So if there's too little people who want to work in here, this long run aggregate supply made up of labor hours will obviously decrease. So this will decrease there. But I'm just going to check now potential GDP, what it comprises of. I'm just going to search it. I literally just had it in my mind. But while I'm searching it via ChatGPT, let me go on. Now, there we go. The income tax weakens the incentive to work, right? So, when it's too high income tax, people do not want to work. So this takes away the home wage of workers, so worker salary is less, the cost of labor to farm. This results in a smaller quantity of labor and lower potential GDP. That's exactly what I just said, right? Okay, I got the third one. The third one is technology. Perfect. So potential GDP is made of the number of labor hours or the people who are working. Second one is the capital, so human capital or physical capital, and the third one is technology, right? How much of technology are in the economy? More technology increase potential GDP. Now, supply side effects. Okay, so very easy. This shows you how the labor effects this happens, huh? So obviously now when there's more tax, right? The supply of labor. Now this is looking at the supply and demand of labor. This we actually did in part 2, I think, yeah. Supply and demand of labor. The supply is obviously going to be the humans to supplying the labor. So the employees, demand will be the businesses. So if there's more tax, this whole supply is going to change to the left. It'll decrease because a lot of people do not want to work anymore because it's too high tax. So when tax is added, it moves to the left. So can you see over here down is moving from 4 to 3. Labor is moving from 4 to 3. This graph is directly linked to this graph. So this graph moves from 4 to 3. So 4 to 3, it moves down. So can you see how the real GDP decreases? This means potential GDP decreases, right? So that's what happens, right? This is called a production function we did in part 2. So basically, yeah. So that's how it works, right? So in labor, it's basically decreases the labor. It affects the real potential GDP. Just remember, income tax increase, labor goes left, it decreases, and obviously potential GDP decreases. That's what you must do, right? The effects of it, right? Right. So supply side effects of fiscal policy. So okay. So when you have tax, right? So before we talk about tax on labor, but what if tax on products? When you go to a shop, right, you have to pay VAT. That's a tax on products. So the more tax or higher the tax on products, you're not going to buy so many products in the economy, right? If bread is 20 rand, and by the way, bread does not have tax, brown bread in particular does not have tax. But what if they implement tax on bread? Bread will go to about 23 rand. You will buy less of that bread. Yes? Perfect. So because you're going to buy less of that bread, right, it's going to have an extremely, extremely big effect. You as a person who earns a salary will not basically have enough money to buy other products that you used to buy. Products in the economy as a whole is getting very expensive. All tax is going up. Prices of products are going up. You have a salary of maybe 10,000. You cannot buy so many of products. You get depressed because of this. You think you can't exist in this world. People get depressed. People therefore do not want to work. They do not want to work because this is like a decrease in their salary, a real wage rate. So the higher the tax on goods and services, the lower the after-tax wage rate, and the less incentive to supply labor, right? Prices are going too expensive in the product. You don't have the money to buy those products. You get depressed and you stop working entirely. Like literally depressed. The effects of capital income. Okay. Now we're talking about interest rate. So the government can control the interest rate also, right? Government can control the interest rate. It'll affect investments and savings. How? If your interest rate, right? A tax on interest income weakens incentives to save. Okay. A tax on interest income. So they're talking about your tax, right? So interest income, the same thing we were talking about before. So your salary is being taxed. If it's very, very high, right? It will weaken the incentive to save. So people won't save much, which makes sense, right? If you're having a very, very low salary, you're not having a lot of extra money, so you won't save. Also, there will be a reduce in lending. You might say, why reduce in lending? Very, very easy. How banks work. People put money in the bank lends money to everyone. So if not a lot of savings are happening, not a lot of people are putting money in banks, there won't be enough to lend out. So savings decrease, lending decrease. The economy as a whole, money is not circulating. There's going to be a downhill trend right now. What's going to happen? And you'll see it just now. It's called a recession, and this is how a recession happens, right? Government thinks they're smart. They put too much of tax. Economy goes blasting down, and this is where it doesn't mean when the government, the more high the taxes, the more income for the government. There's going to come a point where the tax is too high and it'll cause the economy to crash one time. And we'll do that with the Laffer curve just now. So yeah, that's basically what this slide is. There we go, the Laffer curve. So, tax. Now, how do you explain this curve? Right, very, very simple. This is your tax rate, right? In percent. This is your revenue, the government's revenue. The higher the tax rate, right? Picture you as a government. The higher the tax rate, you're going to get more money from the population, right? But it comes to a point where the tax rate is so high to where when you increase your tax, you're not going to get more money. You're going to get less money, right? This makes a parabola. Now, if you did grade 12, you know a parabola has a maximum. After the maximum, it crashes, right? Very, very easy. The equation of the parabola is y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. I'm just joking. No, it is actually real, but like you don't have to know it. But basically, it has a maximum, right? Now, what happens? Let's say the tax rate over here, it's 40%. So 1% increasing to 30%, will the government make more money? 100%, it's increasing. 30 to 40%, if it increased, will the government make more money? 100%. If the government is increasing tax from 40% to 50%, will it make more money? No, it'll actually decrease. And can you see how quickly it decreases? If the government is getting 40% of tax and makes tax now like 41, 42%, the economy, if we look at our real GDP, what's going to happen? As soon as they do that, it's going to crash. And when it crashes, there's going to be everything bad happens. There's unemployment, people are going to be unemployed. So now you might be thinking the logic of this. Why it comes a maximum point where you won't collect tax? Very, very simple. There's three things, right? Number one is immigration. When the tax is too high in the country like over here, people will leave. And the most important thing you have to know is these will be the rich people. So all those rich people that were actually paying tax in your country like South Africa, if the tax is too high, they will leave this country. Therefore, that is why your tax will decrease, because they left the country. Number two, tax avoidance and tax evasion. The higher the tax rate is, people are going to do not want to pay the tax. So they'll do tax evasion, all those illegal things. They're not going to get their tax money goes down. Third one, demotivation. When the tax is too high, right, you just do not want to like work more. You do not want to contribute to society by paying tax. So at the end of the day, it just decreases, right? People got fed up. So that's why there's a maximum point, right? So that's the whole Laffer curve. Ideally, you want to be close over here to this maximum, close, but not too much. Otherwise, it'll fall. It'll cause a crash. Okay, so there's two types of fiscal stimulus. Fiscal policies, there's two types, right? Another name for fiscal policy is fiscal stimulus. They got the word stimulus from stimulating the economy. Same thing, fiscal policy stimulating the economy. Fiscal policy is same as this. Two types, automatic and discrete. When you look at your graph, real GDP, potential GDP, it goes up and down, right? This up and down normal going thing, majingi, and the government putting money in there, controlling the tax, it's all called automatic. This is done automatically by government, right? This is normal operations, and I want to emphasize normal. But what is decretionary? Decretionary, let's say like within a month, something big happened in the economy, right? So let's say in a month's time, decretionary, there's a virus in a country, right? So this virus is causing people to become unemployed. You're going into lockdowns. COVID. So COVID came. This will be a decretionary. So all the monetary policies implemented by government during COVID, all the lockdowns, that's not normal. People getting more money, unemployment benefits, that wasn't normal. People getting more grants, that wasn't normal. All the grants increased, that wasn't normal. That was because of COVID. This is unregular. This is unnormal. Unregular. This was something that happened because a boom happened. something extremely big happen that is not normal. These policies that government implements, called discretionary. Automatic is what government just do now, like, normal. Okay, so automatic is tax revenues. So everything that we just did now about tax, that's tax revenues. So okay, so explain. Okay, you got potential GDP and real GDP. Real GDP goes up, down, up, down, up, down, right? As it goes out, what happens? It's good. People become employed. Employment, right? When people become employed, right? Inflation happens. Why? Just inflation happens, right? Demand is going very high, so inflation is happening. Inflation is happening. Because it's going up is good. Government will cut down on their um spending, yeah, right? So unemployment benefits, yeah. When it goes up, unemployment goes down. So government won't implement any monetary policies with unemployment benefits because over here going up, there's too many people employed. Now it comes to a point where resources and supplies gets too expensive for the businesses. So now the real GDP will go down. When it goes down, you get deflation. Prices start to drop. People get unemployed. Government comes in now. They put unemployment benefits. They give you unemployment benefits. Governments cut down tax. Tax goes down. So when the economy is going down, tax goes down. And then it goes up again. Tax goes up. Employment goes increase. Unemployment reduces. So you see how it works, this whole thing. So it makes total sense, everything they're saying here, right? So the government typically spends more when it's going down. So like unemployment benefits, all that. So yeah, and obviously the government will reduce the tax when the economy is going downhill. So yeah. Now expansion is where it goes up. The same graph I was showing you, it goes up, right? Expenditures decrease. I told you in a boom. Boom is when it goes up to the top figure, top boom. And the budget provides us restricting the inflationary gap. Yeah. The inflationary gap is this. So if you draw a straight line, right? The inflationary gap is this. So this area like that. You want the inflationary gap not to be too big. I told you before, Keynes didn't want it to be like this because the inflationary gap is too big. Keynes wanted it to be like this, where the inflationary gaps are very, very small. See? These are inflationary gaps. They're very, very small. So small inflationary gaps, small recession gaps, that's basically what we want in this world. Recession, when it's going down, revenues fall and expenditures increase. Government will spend more, right? Government will spend more, give people money, give people that to stimulate the economy. So it goes back up, and it does go back up. That is why it goes down, goes back up, down, back up. Government spend, government doesn't spend. Government spends, that's how the world works, right? Now, there's two types of budget balances, right? Structural and cyclical. If I tell you my budget balance is 100 million, right? It's either called a structural balance or it's called a cyclic balance. Structural balance is basically means the balance that you got now, your budget balance, it happened when the economy was at full employment. So if the economy is full employment and it made a surplus of 10 million, then that 10 million is called a structural balance. However, cyclic is when the economy is going downhill and you get a balance. That balance is called a cyclic balance. You need to know a calculation over there. The calculation is very, very simple. Let's do structural first calculation. The government has tax on 100 rand. Okay, I'm just small figures because you understand. The government has tax on 100 rand. That's the income of the government. The government spends 20 rand. It'll be a surplus of 80 rand. And it'll call a structural balance surplus, right? Let's say over here, it has a surplus. Let's say it has a surplus of 150 rand. If over here has a surplus of 150 rand, right? You still have to minus what was it when it's structured. So you'll minus 80 rand. So it'll be 70 rand. So you'll always minus the structured surplus, right? It makes more sense because you want to take out in economics, you want to basically do where everything is constant. So you want to like make sure you get the cyclic without the structure. So that is why you minus it, right? So very very easy. You take the surplus or deficit for the for that period minus the structured. Done. Over here you just like work out your surplus or deficit easy, right? But over here you have to work it out, but then you have to minus the one way it was structured. Cyclic and structured. So you also have to picture this in graphs, right? A revenue graph, it's very easy. A revenue graph, think of a supply graph increasing because supply, when businesses supply goods, they get revenue for it. So supply is this graph, going down is your expense graph. So obviously over here, it's not operating in the full economic equilibrium, or what is called um, full employment. So because it's not in full employment, you're going to be a cyclic deficit or cyclic surplus, right? Balance. Over here, it'll be a surplus because this is higher than this. This is revenue. So revenue is higher than your expense. That is good. That is a cyclic surplus. Cyclic deficit is when expense is higher than that. Over here, you're only supposed to look at one graph. So let's just look at B. Let's look at C. C, because it's on this short run, long run supply curve. This is a long run supply curve. Everything over here is happening at full equilibrium. Sorry, not full equilibrium. What is it called again? I keep forgetting what it's called. Full employment, sorry. So because these two dots are on the line, can you see? It's happening at full equilibrium, so you already know you're going to call it a structured. So now, is it a surplus or deficit? Well, the revenue is higher than this out expense, so obviously here is going to be a surplus, and over here is going to be a deficit here. Right? Over here, let's see, it will be a structured, but revenue is equal to expense. See how they're both all equal. So that's for a balanced budget, basically balance. I told you when the equal is called a budget balance. Discretionary, we discussed this, COVID-19, right? COVID-19, let's see, changes. Okay, so obviously a policy like when COVID happens, government will spend money, right? Government spend money in grants and so on, right? It'll have a multiplier effect. Government spends 100 million rand in the people, real GDP will increase to 200 million. So because 100 million you spend, an increase to 200 million, the multiplier was times 2. Now, the multiplier is not very strong when it deals with the government expenditure. It's not strong. So if you're going to like really want the economy to do well, the government shouldn't spend much, but the tax multiplier is very strong. What this means. So let's say the economy is going down, right? The economy is going down. Would the government rather spend or reduce tax? Reduce tax. Why? When the government reduces tax, it has an extremely big multiplier. So when the government reduces tax, the economy gets working extremely good and it goes up. If you do spending, it doesn't have that much effect. So yes, it will go up eventually, but it'll take a very long time. So tax has a big multiplier. Government spends 1 million, it might have a multiplier to 3 million, so times 3. But spending might just be times 2. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So the multiplier effect is very, very easy. The government spends, right? When the government spends, anytime you're putting money in the economy, they put in this multiple choice. Money in the economy, when you put, demand increases. So, for the first year, it'll increase, then the multiplier increase. So, when the multiplier effect happens, demand will keep moving to the right until it just stops moving, right? That's the multiplier effect. So, as you can see over here, I already discussed it. Tax multiplier is larger than the government X multiplier. And yeah, there we go. So, the government all do this because of PE, right? To increase production and to increase employment. That's the whole way economy is working now, production and employment. And time lags. Now, time lags are like why fiscal stimulus might not work very, very good, right? It's because of number one, recognition lag. lag. So you might not recognize that you need to do a fiscal policy. So the government over there is just sleeping, the economy is going down, but they're just sleeping, they're not recognizing the economy is going down. So that takes time for you to implement fiscal stimulus. Lawmaking lag. Sometimes if you want to spend money in the economy, you have to make a law. You have to get permission from the parliament. Vote for it. So now that's going to take time, therefore delay fiscal. Impact lag. When the government puts money in the economy, it might not impact it straight away. It takes time for the economy to work, the economy to do the multiplier, the economy to actually work. So that will affect the fiscal stimulus. And that is it, right? Yeah. Right, so that is it for part. Okay, so that is it for part 1. Part 3, video 1. Part 4, video 1.